The courtroom felt colder than any winter night I'd survived. I could actually feel the chill seeping into my fingertips, making them stiff against the polished wooden table. Above me, the fluorescent lights buzzed a low metallic hum, steady, rhythmic, like they were waiting for someone to finally admit to something. I kept my gaze forward, jaw locked, breath measured. Across the aisle, my stepmom played her role with theatrical precision. The black dress, the fake pearl handkerchief, the trembling lip she only seemed to remember when someone was watching her. She dabbed her eyes every few seconds, but not a single tear left a mark. Her grief looked airbrushed, picture perfect, insincere, rehearsed. And then the judge lifted it, the document, Grandma's final letter. The parchment edges were yellow and delicate, like it had aged with secrets pressed between the lines. From where I sat, it looked almost alive, shivering faintly, as if it knew this moment was its resurrection. My heart tightened. That letter was the one thing she could never twist, never steal, never perform her way around. In that silent second, I realized everything was about to change. Before I take you into this story, into the courtroom, the lies, the betrayal, and the final letter that changed everything, make sure you subscribe. This channel is where real stories of justice, family betrayal, and unexpected truth come alive. If you're someone who believes in evidence over drama, loyalty over manipulation, and quiet strength over loud lies, hit that subscribe button now so you never miss the next chapter of justice.
Grandma's house was always my refuge, a place where the world seemed to exhale. Sunlight poured through her lace curtains every morning, settling into warm puddles across the lemon-scented hallways. She had this gentle way of calling my name, soft, steady, full of a pride I didn't see anywhere else. "You're the only one who listens," she used to say, brushing crumbs off the kitchen table after we baked together. Those moments felt like home. The rest of my life didn't. When Dad remarried, the atmosphere shifted, like someone had opened a door to a colder season. My stepmom didn't raise her voice or break plates. Her methods were quieter, sharper. A smile held a second too long. A compliment dipped in suspicion. She floated around the house like a well-dressed shadow, always watching, always calculating. With Dad wrapped around her finger, the house slowly split into sides. Theirs, crowded and cheerful. Mine, silent except for the echo of Grandma's voice, telling me not to lose myself. Grandma saw everything. She didn't confront my stepmom. She didn't need to. She simply observed, eyes narrowed the slightest bit, as if she could smell dishonesty the way others smell smoke. She taught me habits that seemed strange at the time. How to organize important documents, how to store duplicate records, how to keep receipts tucked away just in case. I thought she was preparing me for adulthood. I didn't realize she was preparing me for battle. Our bond wasn't flashy. It was built in soft routines, teacups warming our hands, crossword puzzles on Sunday afternoons, slow walks where she told stories about her mother's stern wisdom and her father's stubborn pride. She'd pause sometimes, press a hand against mine, and say, "Family is simple until money complicates it." I didn't understand. Not then. Blinked. One evening, during a harsh winter storm, the windows rattling like fragile bones, she brought it up again. Her estate. She spoke about it with a firmness that cut through the howling wind. She wanted everything kept in the bloodline. No dilution. No outsiders twisting the meaning of legacy. She told me people behave differently when a dollar sign enters the conversation. That love can suddenly start wearing a mask. Bangkok, I remember nodding, not fully grasping why she looked so serious, why she held my hand as if imprinting something into my skin. But I understand now. Those words weren't a warning. They were prophecy. Looking back, there was warmth in every memory with her, but beneath it, a quiet dread lingered. A creeping feeling that one day, someone would try to take what wasn't theirs. And when that day came, she wanted me ready. The day Grandma passed, the world lost its sound. Even the hospital machines seemed to breathe softer, as if they understood something sacred had slipped away. Rain streaked down the wide glass windows in slow, heavy lines, blurring the city outside until it looked like a watercolor painting left out in a storm. I sat beside her bed long after the nurses left, fingers curled around the thin sheets, trying to memorize the warmth she carried. It faded too quickly. Grief hit me like a tide, silent, swallowing, merciless. My stepmom arrived an hour later, face arranged perfectly into worry, lips pursed just enough to suggest heartbreak. But her eyes darted to the bedside table before they drifted to me. She placed a hand on my shoulder, squeezing with a little too much calculation, then sighed dramatically. She didn't even wait 2 full days before she asked, "Beta, did your grandma ever mention a will? You know how old people forget where they leave important things." Disregori, too sweet, too smooth, confiscated like sugar poured over something rotten. I said nothing, but inside, something shifted. Yeah. Over the next few days, she started planting seeds, subtle, poisonous ones. "Your grandma always wanted everyone to share everything," she'd say while stirring tea she didn't even drink. Catastrophic. "She loved me like her own," she commented loudly while sorting laundry she didn't need to touch. "She talked a lot about fairness. You remember that, right?" Each sentence was crafted like a painter, adding layers to a portrait she hoped to pass as truth. She was rewriting history line by line, pretending she'd been some devoted caretaker instead of the distant, performative figure she always was. When we went to clean out Grandma's house, the atmosphere felt wrong. The once bright corridors now dimmed by closed curtains. Dust floated lazily in slanted beams of sunlight. Every clock ticked louder than I remembered, like the house itself was nervous. I headed straight to the room where Grandma kept her important things. An oak drawer with brass handles, softened by decades of use. She always stored her will, insurance papers, and financial notes there. But when I pulled it open, a cold emptiness greeted me. The entire folder was gone. Not misplaced, not shuffled, gone. My stepmom peeked over my shoulder, feigning surprise with the grace of a bad stage actor. "Oh, maybe she moved it. Old people forget things all the time," she said, shrugging, though her fingers tightened around the antique vase she suddenly seemed desperate to hold. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I watched. Yeah. The phone calls behind closed doors that ended abruptly when I walked in. The sudden urgency with which she catalogued objects she'd once called dusty junk. Pedestrians to a lawyer she described as a friend helping with emotional paperwork. Grandma's jewelry, asking repeatedly whether there were family traditions about who inherited what. I noticed everything. Her tells, her slip-ups, her impatience. But I kept my face neutral, my voice steady, my presence quiet. That was the advantage Grandma had taught me. Observe first, act later. The whole house felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for the truth to find its way back into the open. And I could feel it, deep down, like a storm gathering beneath my ribs. Whatever my stepmom was planning, She wasn't done yet. 2 weeks passed in a strange, suspended quiet. Grief was still sitting heavy in my chest, but life outside didn't pause, not for mourning, not for memory, not for the ache that had settled in my bones. Then one evening, just as the sky began dimming into that soft, bruised purple color, a courier knocked on my apartment door. A slim envelope, my name typed in bold. Staples, I tore it open, the air changed. Inside was a legal notice, my stepmom formally claiming executor rights and partial ownership of Grandma's estate. She alleged that Grandma had verbally promised her a share, painting herself as a long-standing emotional support and caretaker. I felt heat rise in my chest, but it wasn't panic, it was clarity. Something inside me clicked into place. The game she'd been rehearsing quietly, she'd finally stepped onto the stage. Connection a long minute, the room silent except for the faint ticking of the clock. Then I folded it precisely, placed it on the table, and inhaled. Chrome taught me to handle storms with preparation, not fear. So I started retracing steps, hers and mine. Fingered morning, I opened the file box where Grandma kept copies of her bank statements. She'd been meticulous, highlighting deposits, marking interest, writing small notes in the margins like reminders to her future self. I went through every sheet, tracing her handwriting with my thumb. The dates were consistent, the signatures matched. Nothing suggested a sudden change of heart, no impulsive decision to rewrite her beneficiaries. After that, I unlocked the fireproof safe she'd insisted we buy together. I still remembered her telling me, "Paper burns, but truth shouldn't." Inside the safe were old insurance papers, duplicates of property records, a list of monthly expenses, but the will, still missing. Not stolen from the house, removed, deliberate, calculated. I wrote down what I found, what I didn't, and what felt out of place. Grandma always said patterns tell the story, even when people won't. Then came the visit to her attorney. His office was just as she loved it, amber lamps casting warm halos, walnut shelves lined with case files, rain streaking the windows like slow tears. The atmosphere felt oddly comforting, as if she were sitting there beside me. When I told him about her passing, he removed his glasses, sighed, and nodded with a heaviness that seemed genuine. "I was expecting you," he said softly. Then he reached into a drawer. A sealed envelope, my name handwritten across it in Grandma. In Grandma. We have the step exactly. The way of coming down, I was performingly did, but no, I perceptibly with him the right there. This is the way what working up, because it removed him together, and it's grandingly. My name so bringly with any more into the year. Then I wrote down the file, with my name slightment down, with the stubble crosses distribute. The way would have to work the morning road, with other special right there in join me. The way if they are moving road into the moment, but we forget the interesting above the world, when he removed him with many weather on a structures, and effective the popular believe. The field children wise that we had every been happened. My many envelope that is generally beautiful anymore. My favorite potem was 20% ages, but I script that something anywhere as they happened. The first part of the sun, my finally really wait to no care. The way we have to learn the right. Thank you for watching this case. It was the moments and the right, that is acute for making the right. If you want to find favorite potty way, that is always beginning from many favorite part of the face, but unfortunately, then generally discover than favorite part of the envelope. The way that I didn't reticlize long, but what makes with himself. We felt this close for property. We simply different things like that. A sealed envelope. Mike handwritten across it in Grandma's looping script. My breath caught. Opened it carefully. Inside was a letter, her estate instructions, clear and decisive. She left everything to me, not out of favoritism, but because she trusted me to preserve what she built. There were no ambiguities, no shared ownership, no mentions of verbal promises. It was direct, unshakable, and full of her unmistakable firmness. My grief shifted then, not disappearing, but transforming, sharpening. For the first time since she passed, I didn't feel like a child who'd lost their anchor. I felt like someone who'd been handed a responsibility, a purpose. Protecting her legacy wasn't just about property. It was about honoring the woman who taught me resilience in the softest ways. When I returned home, I spread everything across my table. Bank logs, her letter, photos of us updating her files, voice notes she sent me, her warm, steady voice reminding me to stay organized, to keep backups of everything. She always knew people could be unpredictable, but evidence never lied. I created a timeline with time-stamped emails, receipts, and archived documents. Every piece fit together like she'd designed it for this very moment. My stepmom thought she was ahead, but she didn't understand that Grandma wasn't just sentimental, she was strategic. She'd raised me to be the same. Familiarity rain tapped against my window in slow, gentle rhythms. Inside, the paper edges caught the lamplight like tiny revelations, quiet truths waiting patiently for their moment. That moment was coming. The courtroom was coming. Yeah, and this time, I wouldn't walk in grieving. I would walk in ready. The courtroom felt like a theater built for tension. Air thick with the sharp sweetness of too much perfume, whispers fluttering like moth wings, and polished floors reflecting everyone's nerves. I took my seat quietly, hands folded, breath slow. Across the aisle, my stepmom entered with the grand flourish of someone stepping onto a stage. Black dress, matching shawl, and a box of tissues she clutched dramatically, even though her face was suspiciously dry. She dabbed at invisible tears, leaning close to her lawyer as if she were the tragic protagonist of the story. Every movement was rehearsed, every sigh exaggerated. She acted heartbroken, devastated, betrayed, anything except honest. Her lawyer stood first when the hearing began. He spoke in soft, sympathetic tones, painting her as a misunderstood angel who had sacrificed so much for my grandmother. He insisted that there had been a verbal promise, a moment of heartfelt gratitude, where Grandma allegedly took my stepmom's hands and said, "You'll be taken care of, don't worry." He spun stories dripping with sentiment, fabricated memories, emotional monologues, and conveniently unverifiable conversations. My stepmom nodded along dramatically, pressing a tissue to her face, letting her shoulders tremble just enough for the judge to notice. But the judge didn't look moved. He looked patient, waiting, like he knew a performance when he saw one. When they finished, all eyes shifted to me. My stepmom's gaze sharpened, static, expectant, almost daring me to lose my composure. But I'd learned from Grandma, storms don't scare you when you know how to stand still. I rose slowly, smoothing the front of my shirt, and stepped toward the center. Blockchain, no theatrics, I told myself, just truth. I began with the notarized estate letter, sliding it across to the clerk with a steady hand. The judge adjusted his glasses, scanning the lines, his brows knitting with recognition. Grandma's handwriting, firm, clear, unmistakably hers. Then I presented photos. Images of me and Grandma sitting at her kitchen table, documents spread between us, her finger pointing at specific paragraphs as she explained things. Time-stamped, dated, solid. Next came the voicemails. Her voice filled the courtroom, warm, steady, unmistakably lucid. She talked about updating her estate, making sure everything was properly assigned, reminding me to keep copies. Vaccinated, ever, of my stepmom. Not a hint of hesitation. I watched my stepmom shift in her seat, her practiced grief faltering. The tissue trembled in her hand, but this time it wasn't for show. Then came the financial logs. Each page listed my name. Every deposit, every transaction, every planned allocation. All in my direction, all consistent. Each piece of evidence hit the room like a quiet hammer. No shouting, no drama, just truth delivered in clean, precise strokes. Flashlight. The courtroom felt heavier now. The tension no longer belonged to me. It had migrated to her side of the aisle. My stepmom's foot began tapping the floor, her eyes darting between me, the judge, and her lawyer. When the judge turned to her, asking if she had counter-evidence, her voice cracked for the first time. She stammered something about stress, how grief made her forget things, how she might have misremembered certain details. Confiscated, her lawyer tried to interject, but the judge raised a hand. Let her speak. And that was the moment her performance dissolved. She talked too fast, contradicting herself 3 times in 30 seconds. Crimson claimed Grandma told her the promise a year ago, no, maybe a few months ago. It was definitely last summer. Slashing Grandma loved her like a daughter, despite multiple witnesses knowing they barely shared conversations. She reached for her tissue again, but her hand shook more from panic than sorrow. The judge's expression hardened with each word she uttered. Not cruel, just disappointed. Like he'd seen this kind of deception too many times. Silence settled, deep, final. Carried the weight of the room, echoing against the wooden walls. The evidence is overwhelmingly clear. The estate belongs entirely to the rightful heir. His eyes shifted to me. And that is you. My stepmom's mouth fell open, her breath hitching as the words hit her. But the judge wasn't finished. For attempting to manipulate the process, for presenting baseless claims, for wasting the court's time. His voice was calm, but each syllable cut through the air like a clean blade of justice. The gavel struck once, sharp, final. A sound that echoed in my chest like the closing of a long, unfinished chapter. I exhaled slowly. My heartbeat synced with the fading reverberations. Across the aisle, my stepmom's shoulders collapsed inward, the performance gone, leaving only the truth she tried so hard to bury. This wasn't a triumphant victory. It was a quiet one. The kind Grandma would have appreciated, steady, dignified, earned. That evening, when the courtroom noise finally dissolved into memory, I walked into my apartment like someone stepping into a sanctuary they didn't know they needed. The rain had already begun, soft, persistent, almost polite, tracing delicate paths down the window. I set my keys down, placed my bag on the table, and there it was, Grandma's letter, the one the judge held up like a resurrected truth. Its edges were still curled from years in hiding, but her handwriting felt warm, like she had just set the pen down minutes ago. I rested it beside my coffee mug, steam rising in a straight, perfect line. For a moment, it almost felt like she was here, straightening the papers, telling me to drink before it gets cold. I didn't cheer. I didn't call anyone. I didn't even replay the courtroom moment in my head. I just sat there, breathing, slow, intentional, like my lungs finally remembered how to work without the weight of betrayal pressing on them. The documents I won were stacked on the table, and I smoothed their edges with my palm, aligning them until they sat in a neat, respectful pile. Grandma would have smiled at that. She always believed order was a quiet form of gratitude. This victory, it wasn't about the inheritance or the house or the bank account they tried to carve my name out of. It was about something older, something softer. It was about the last real bond I had with someone who loved without agenda. Outside, the city lights flickered against the wet pavement, throwing reflections across my floor like scattered promises. I watched them shift and settle, the way memories do, some bright, some blurred, all permanent. And in that stillness, I finally understood something I had never dared to say out loud. Some people chase inheritance like it's oxygen, a right they're entitled to just because they share a last name. But legacy, real legacy, isn't what you grab from someone's hands. It's what they place into your heart without expecting repayment. It's built in quiet kitchens, in long evening conversations, in trust offered without terms or signatures. Grandma's legacy wasn't the money they fought over. It was this moment, this peace, this clarity, this gentle reminder that love doesn't need a witness to matter. I lifted the letter one more time, tracing a fingertip over her looping script. The rain outside softened, then paused altogether, like even the sky was catching its breath. Slamming, and then, as the city lights shimmered across the documents, my documents now, I felt the truth settle inside me, steady and unmoving. Justice isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare. Justice is quiet, patient, certain, minimized, just like Grandma. Yeah, if Grandma's story touched you, if you've ever carried quiet injustice in your chest, don't let this journey end here. Subscribe and become part of this channel, racked place where every week we give voice. Arts to the people who were silenced by family, trust, and betrayal. Like, share, and drop your story in the comments. You never know who might find the courage they need because of your words. And remember, justice is quiet, but your support doesn't have to be.